I think it's really unusual to have a father and son write memoirs about the same period of time in their lives, in the lives of a family. I guess in many ways this was a coincidence of so many different things came together. I wrote a story about our family's ordeal when Nick, my beautiful boy of 18 or 19, started to become addicted to methamphetamine. And the story chronicled the next few horrific years, all the rehab tries, all the relapses, times that no parent wants to go through. No parent wants to see their son suffering in the ways that Nick suffered during those years. And finally, though, Nick was doing better, and he'd been in recovery for a while, and I'm a writer, and I sort of process things by writing, and put together a piece for the New York Times Magazine about it. Nick read it, his mom read it, my wife read it. Everybody was encouraging me to submit it, and I did, and the Times published it. And from that, there was such a sort of dramatic, positive response. Both Nick and I heard from so many people, and it was just affirming of our story about Nick's hard work in recovery, of our discussion of this openly, of something that many people don't want to talk about or try to keep secret. And so both of us, Nick was contacted by a fabulous editor at Simon & Schuster, and Jeannie Tsao, who asked if he was interested in writing a memoir, one that might inspire other young people going through what he had gone through. And in the meantime, I was working on a different book, and with my editor made the decision to shift gears, put my other book on hold, and to go deeper into this subject. So over the next few years, we both set to writing a story that was incredibly painful to write, incredibly painful to relive, but also had another side to it too, which was the rebuilding of a relationship, the rebuilding of a life in this case. Nick and I went off and set about writing our books, and Nick has always been an amazing writer. He was in the high school newspaper, and he won the Ernest Hemingway Journalism Award for high school journalists. He was published in Newsweek when he was only 16. He was published in the San Francisco Chronicle. So he was a serious writer and a good writer, and I made my living as a journalist, so it was sort of natural for us to try to make some sense of this experience with our writing. We went forward writing, and both of us were derailed in the process at different points. I had a brain hemorrhage right when I was in the middle of my book, and at that point there was no certainty that I was actually going to survive, never mind get back to writing. I did, though, and I obviously survived and got back to writing, but not for 3 or 4 months. And Nick, after he'd written about half of his book, suffered a horrible relapse, and there was a big question, forget about whether he was going to be able to finish his book, there was a question about whether he was going to make it. But he did, and he went back into recovery, and both of us then continued to write our books. Only after we'd completed them, we had rough manuscripts, did we decide to exchange them. Both of us wanted to be sure that there was nothing, so many people had been hurt through this experience that we just didn't want anyone else hurt. And so we both wanted each other to feel 100% good about what we'd written, and I wanted to make sure Nick had no concerns about anything I'd written, and he wanted to do the same with me. So at that point, we read each other's books. From the opening page, it was startling to me to see how different they are in some ways, because our voices are different, our ages are different. My perspective as a parent, his as a child or a son. He's now 25, I'm now 52, so there's that. But there also is a connection that is shared from the very, very opening of each book, and the fact that we each chose a quote from probably the artist who meant the most in our lives, John Lennon, to open the books, it just choked me up. We learned by going through it the profundity of the writing process, that when you write about your life in the way that we both decided to do, there's no separation from the writing and life itself. Going through these experiences again, both reading Nick's book and writing it for myself, it was traumatic, it was devastating, and it also filled me with just enormous love for Nick and appreciation for him. And as we went forward, reading each other's books, it brought up so many things to talk about that we had probably talked about but maybe needed to talk about again. Since then, the process of publishing the books, of having it determined that both books could come out about the same time, all those things were extraordinary. And now being in a position to talk about this experience with some ability to look back and to have some perspective on it, I think he'd say the same thing. It's made us closer. I think we appreciate each other more. We have a better relationship than we've ever had. And I think we have a certain kind of mutual respect and pride. And there was a time when the idea of going on a book tour together, I mean, the idea was unthinkable for a while. There was a time when none of this stuff was possible. And now, I think we both feel the same. It just is really exciting. It's going to make it really special. This sort of healing process has gone on and would have gone on without the books and would have gone on even if we had not been writing these books. But it became an integral part of it because everything on those pages is a direct reflection of what is inside us.